Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome to another edition of Nothing But a Word. I'm your host, Michael Davis, and today's word of the day is vote. And here with me, I have a special guest, Mr. Robert People. He's a young African-American Floridian here in Tampa that's running for Congress. And I have him here, guys. He's going to deliver the message of what we need to hear, because we need to know, make an educated vote coming up in this cycle, which is also very, very important, as you all know. And I don't need to go into any specifics about what's going on in world politics, but we're going to need to know something because we all agree that we need to make a change at some point. So here we are. Let's get into it. Mr. People, first of all, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I appreciate you accepting my request to have you on, because I want to use my platform to do something, to play a part, because I too, like all the other Americans here, we care about the direction that our country is going in and all the ins and outs where our communities are going as well. And by you being here in Tampa with me, I'm very, very deeply affected by the ins and outs about here, Tampa, Pasco County, in and around Tampa Bay area. And I'm very, very interested in how the vote's going to be swinging in the upcoming elections. So with that being said, I took the liberty, and I got to share with you that I took the liberty to looking up into Wikipedia, what's the actual meaning of the word vote. And what I came from, what I got from it was that voting is an opportunity for one to express an opinion. And it's done by a legal process, by balloting, and we got several forms of ballot. So when I look at that, the opportunity to express someone's opinion, it took me back a little bit when I see that all the people, all of our ancestors particularly, many of them were killed for just trying to express their opinion. And here we are in this day where we have the actual opportunity to vote. So many of us have not voted, which is, to me, kind of strange for me, and I find that hard to digest. So, but we'll get into that. But I want to start out by asking you, my God, I'm impressed, because we have so much in common, you and I. We're both veterans, and you're an author, you're a writer, screenwriter, poet, blogger, such as me, and you're married with 2 kids. How long you been married?
Married this time, going on 8 years.
8 years,
and we both have children from previous marriages. Now they're all grown, so now I'm the only one getting on my wife's nerves now. So.
Well, you're doing better than me because I can't be with nobody 8 minutes. So you're doing better than me. So tell me, what actually inspired you to decide to run for Congress?
I would say part of my military service, because growing up, politics was not something we discussed, not because it was something that was taboo, but we just didn't feel, and I grew up in inner city Baltimore, and quite a few people I've heard them say some form of the benefits of politics don't reach us as far as our community. So it was something we didn't discuss because we thought it would never get to us. So over time, I became a little bit interested in it because as an aspiring at the time journalist, I watched the news and I saw what was being discussed and things like that. And it was confusing for me at the time because we didn't talk about it within our communities. But after I joined the Army, and there were certain things that sort of planted seeds, and there was one point where I was ready to be finished at about 4 years because I only thought I was going to do one term. Then I did another term. Yeah, I know there's probably a lot of stories of people saying they were going to get in and they say, you know what, this is the only one I want to do. Then my brother, I wanted to follow him to I was in Fort Campbell, wanted to follow him to Fort Hood. So I said, okay, I'll re-enlist one more time just so I can get, hang out with him for a little bit. But shortly before 9/11, I want to say a couple months before 9/11, we went to an assembly about, and I can't remember the topic now, but at the beginning of it, the base command sergeant major, it was just for the E4 and below.
Yes.
So he said, as I'm going to y'all units, and of course we're like, oh man, here we go, we got a lecture coming. And we go to your units, you have a lot of you have, a lot of complaining, but a lot of you have good ideas.
Hmm.
Then you said, well, how many of you want to go to the promotion board for sergeant? I'm pretty sure it's the same way, I think, or
Yes,
similar for
pretty
the
much.
Navy. But a couple raised their hand. I didn't, because I'm like, I got about 8 months to go. I'm just, no. So then he says, that's a shame. It says only a couple of y'all want to do this, but you have, these good ideas. They're going to go back they're going to go back home with you. You're not going to be here implementing them. So, long story short, he went to, are you going to be a part of the problem or a part of the solution?
Yes.
And that stuck with me because I have this sometimes bad habit of going toward challenges.
Yes.
And from that, it just kind of nagged at me like, you know what, I was doing that at my unit too. I was complaining and I was one of the senior
Yes, that's
junior
not a
enlisted.
good look.
Yeah. So when I started, I was like, you know what? If anybody is in this spot to do this, maybe I should. So I said, okay, I'll give it one more enlistment. I'll go back, talk to my sergeant and say, let me go to the, promotion board. I'm ready to do that. So from 4 years, I ended up staying 21 because I found something every time that kept me in. But to fast forward to this presidential election in 2024, when I sat there and over the course of probably the last 15 years while I was serving still, I complained. I got more into learning local politics, national politics, and so forth as well. So once I, after building up followings on social media and so on, I knew that when I got up, because my wife and I went to bed knowing that one of us was going to get up. It was starting off kind of slow, but nothing had really flipped from the last election. So I said, you know what, let's lay down for a little bit. And at the time, after we got up about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, I don't think I have to remind everybody of this. We saw where it ended up.
Yes.
And I said at that stage, I said, you know what, I'm not going to run. I'm not going to run and hide from social media. People are going to they're devastated about this.
Yeah.
They're going to need to hear something as far as something to give some type of hope, something to say, hey, we got to push on.
I like the word hope.
Yeah. Yeah. We have to, they need something. It's like, I can't just disappear, but what words can I give them now that's going to uplift them after seeing this? Because nobody expected it to go this way.
Yes.
It wasn't supposed to go the way the first time. So it's like, how did it happen now? So that was when I decided maybe this is the time. That's when that Sergeant Major's words came back to me and said, you've been complaining all these last 15 years. So how about
did it eat at your soul?
It did. Yeah. Yeah. It got to me and I said, you know what? And I went to my wife, I think a little bit later. I said, this time I need to do this. She said, I got you. And that was
it. Helps to have a supporting partner.
Yeah. If your partner is with you, is for you, who can be against you? That's what
I'm sure.
That's what I look for. So.
I'm sure. So when you got that support from her and y'all decided to do this, what was your first step, actually?
The first step, trying to figure out what I needed to do because I know I was ready to.
Like what area you were going to attack?
What area I was going to attack, what the districts looked like. I know at one point, because at one time after we moved here, I didn't figure I was going to do it here because I thought, hey, I've been all over the place. We moved here in 2019. So what I heard in politics, and this is something that I think trips a lot of people up, is thinking that they're not worthy of serving because of this and that. So at the time I said, well, I'm moving here after being in the Army, I probably shouldn't even bother with this because I will only have been here for a few years. So, and at the time I thought the district I was in was already being represented by a Democrat. So I was misunderstanding for that. So that's what kind of had me tossing in the back of my mind. But then I said, you know what? Let me find that out. And I found out I wasn't. I was actually in a different district. So that was the first step. Well, which district will I represent? What does this entail? How do I need to get myself on the ballot? How do I get this thing rolling?
I applaud you for that. I do. Because it's a lot of us that we have goals and dreams, and we hope that they come true. But it's not often that we act on those dreams to make those hopes come true. And with that being said, what can you bring to the table that's different, that's fresh and new, that we could have some hope for?
One thing I learned in the Army, and I'm gonna reference the military a lot because I learned a lot of lessons that I feel would serve me well in Congress, is leadership. And a lot of people are saying they've gotten to a point where they say, well, our members of Congress aren't leaders. And I don't believe it's because they genuinely feel Congress shouldn't be.
Right.
It's because we've gotten so used to them not showing up the way they
Yes.
should be. And if you're talking about lawmakers, they should be at the
Forefront
of
of everything.
So that means if I'm putting laws out that everybody needs to do this and
Yes.
that, I should be, my P's and Q's, my I's should be dotted, T's crossed, all that. That should be, the minimum.
Which leads to, in my opinion, a lack of integrity.
Right. Yes. So, and when you add, all that, at this point, we see that it's out of control to where there's no feeling, and anybody in any job, there's always something you feel that if I do this and this, I might get fired. And it looks like there's little concern that what's being said, what's being done by members of Congress will get them removed from office. So we see that, we see the comfort in what the words being said, the votes being done. So I would say leadership would be it, because we have to be, don't expect from people what you're not willing to do yourself.
Yes.
And that's why a lot of my potential constituents, they see me throughout the community.
Yes.
Because that's where it starts. We do a lot of talking. I think it's time we need to show up and start listening.
And I agree. I agree. Because I see so much of that on a broad scale throughout this country. And I see where so many people have gotten up into Congress, positions of leadership up there. And so many of their constituents are complaining now because the promises are not being kept, at all. I mean, even on the lowest scale. So, and we've seen a lot of that, even the integrity of the office, in my opinion, of the presidential office.
Yes.
It trickles down. So the integrity from up there is trickling down at a warp speed, where we used to hold that office, the credentials of being in that office at the highest.
Right.
You had to be of the highest of moral character, this and that and the third. You had to have that. But now I think the credentials for being in that office have kind of slightened a little bit, lessened up a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't want to be mean out there, but I got other words to use. But but with that being said, I like that leadership. I'm all about leadership. I am. That's a key word for me. And when we talk about nothing but a word, leadership. That's another word. I have some more pointed questions for you. Okay. Why are we having such a hard time getting African Americans to vote?
I will say we did a canvassing, my team and I did a canvassing in Plant City, which is part of the district.
Yes.
And one lady's comment stuck with me, where she said, when I mentioned I'm running for Congress, we're going and knocking on doors and such, she said, I said, I'm running for Congress for District 15. And she said right away, oh, you ain't going to win. And I'm not, and it wasn't something like that, I'm expecting, by this point I'm expecting that, because this was just a few months ago and I've been campaigning since last year. So, and as I'm going, I just said, yep, okay, understood. That's fair. Maybe let's have a conversation with her. But she said, it's too many white people up there. That's why.
Okay.
And that's when it stuck, like, oh, so it's not even about me as the person. It's
right
how Congress looks in your eyes, to where we don't have a chance, really. We as in the community. And I said that's important, because I think that goes back to what I said earlier about coming up and realizing, or people, folks believing in our community that the benefits of politics don't reach us. So there's no point in believing that we, can bring any type of change. And that's where I feel like we have to have those conversations. But also stepping up helps too. We have to say, I was one of the ones who did a lot of complaining. It was time for me to step up, but also meet people where they are too. If you feel that way, let's understand why. Yes. I know the easier thing to do, especially for those of us who are really energized and wanting to do this, is to sort of critique, and understandably so, but critique others who don't. But I think more, and I'm there too, so it's not like I'm, looking down on anybody, because I kind of wanted the same thing. It's like, well, we need to make this happen. How? But it could be something deeper, where it has nothing to do with me. Like in this case, me as a person, had nothing to do with Vice President Harris as a person, but just the whole landscape of, do we have a chance there? And if that's where we are, that means that we as African Americans need to have a different conversation. We need to come to
Yeah.
the table with something different than, okay, wait a minute. Nagging you to go vote is not going to make any difference because you've already decided on
Yes,
some deep level
already.
that you're not, that it
And
makes
see,
no
it
difference.
bothered me when I took the time to look up and see some of the statistics that came out
Mhm.
as to who didn't vote and who did vote and whatever. And I was just so mad
Yeah.
that so many of us missed the mark when it was right there in your face,
Mhm.
you know. And I know that, like, when I know the term making an educational choice. That means you've taken the time to read up on the candidate to see what they're about. You've listened to their platform. And so many of us, from my personal observation and opinion, so many of us don't do that,
Right.
you know. And I don't select the candidate just because of color. I don't.
Mhm.
I select the candidate because of what I hear and what I might believe in that's coming from that person. You know, and trust me on this, when I do this, I always go and I ask God, please put somebody
Mhm.
in the spot that's gonna help us.
Mhm.
I do. I pray for that. So with that being said, you know, um, I feel sorry for those people that tell you right off the bat that you're not gonna win.
Mhm.
Because if you thought that you weren't gonna win, you wouldn't be here.
Right.
I applaud you because you think you're going to win and you believe that you're going to win.
Mhm.
You know, I have to share this with you. I saw a post and a quote from Charles Barkley. You know who he
Yes.
is,
Yeah, I
right?
know trouble.
And, Charles is,
hmm
yeah, he's effervescent,
Charles
isn't
is Charles, yeah.
he? He said, and I quote, "Poor people have been voting Democrat for 50 years,
Mm.
and they'll still poor."
hmm
What do you think he means by that?
I ask that question every time, just about every other time he says something. It's like, what is he? I believe to a certain portion of our society, the feeling is that Democrats are that we're supposed to be the fixers of what is wrong with all of our communities, the marginalized communities
Hmm.
especially. And there could be, of course, a lot of nuances that I'm not at this moment
Yeah.
aware of. Maybe when I'm in office, I'll start seeing some of this a little bit more clear. But that's the belief: is the poor shouldn't exist if they're voting for
Hmm.
Democrats. We're supposed to be fixing this. But also, we look over these years and finding out, looking at how things have adjusted.
Hmm.
It's not, Democrats haven't been in power for all 50 years. It's gone up and down. I believe over the past, I know it's a large portion where there's only been 3 Democratic presidents,
Hmm.
I think in 40 years or something to that effect. And the thing is, yes, we're voting, the belief is poor people are voting Democrat, but Republicans for a large portion of that time have had the power.
Yeah.
So a lot of what Democrats are attempting to do or that we've actually done is being undone by the Republicans. So again, the knocking of the blocks down. And it does feel to me, I feel like what Charles said kind of oversimplifies it a little bit to make it like, okay,
Hmm.
we've been in power the entire time and we're just doing nothing. And in some cases,
Yeah.
there may be some truth to that, but it's not like it hasn't shifted. So of course, you get a little bit, lose a little bit, get a little bit, lose a little bit. And, we're sort of more in the haven't really moved, haven't progressed
Hmm.
as much as we want to space, because we see a lot, especially in this administration, how they're trying to undo
Yeah.
so many accomplishments from people of color, Black
Okay.
people,
Yes.
marginalized communities
Yes.
and so forth. And when things like that happen, of course, that sets us back a little bit. So now we have to kind of start over some to.
So he
That-
could have put that in a different way.
I think so, yeah. Because, again, unless we've had power the entire time, then, that's just saying, hey, we're fixers and we're not, there's a little more to it than that for us to be
Yes.
able to accomplish what we're looking to get to.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell people also. I said, and when you mentioned earlier, I think you mentioned about promises not being
Yes.
kept. I make a point to say there's a lot of promises I don't make because I'm not in a position to make those. That the House of Representatives is a 435 member body. So what I say is I can promise all day that I will propose, that I will support, but I can't say I'm going to change this or fix that because, of course, once I propose, once I support, it's out of my hands and then we have to wait for the process, which is something I want to also fight for and look into to say, well, how are there so many bills that are in an introduced phase and don't go anywhere? We got to
Right,
look at that
right.
too. So that's why I say I'll give you that part, that I will do my part with that.
Yes.
But we have to figure out how to fix the rest of it.
And I'm sure when you submit bills coming from your desk, they have to go through a vetting process.
Yeah.
So many vetting processes
hmm
before it actually reaches the governor, I suspect. right?
Correct. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. And then,
What-
and in this case, being on the federal level, it would be the Senate and then the president.
Do you have a particular bill that you can share with us that that means to you right off the top of your head that you can think of
One that's been in this process already, or something I want to propose?
that you want to propose?
Oh, because federal minimum wage is already out. I want to say 2023 that came out. Getting rid of the fee and the petitions to get on ballots, because the Constitution states, and I'm talking about on the federal, state, and local levels,
Mhm.
because the purpose of it is there's no excuse for $10,440 congressional just to get your name on the ballot. Local, it's still in the a few $1,000s that you have to pay.
Yes.
And where does all this money go? Because it's not going back in the
Yes.
taxpayers' pockets. So that's definitely one I want to get rid of, because the Constitution states a residency, And I'm talking about for the House, for a
Yes.
House seat. Citizenship, residency,
Yes.
citizenship, and age requirements.
Okay.
So that's all it is, because the purpose of public office was for everyday working class people to run. And it's similar on each level. So who decided to add all these extra requirements in here?
Yes.
And of course, that makes it tougher for everyday working class people to be in it, because now the ones who have money, millionaires, billionaires, they're the ones who can jump in and sort of pay their way into office.
Yes.
But the benefits don't come, again, don't reach us. So that would be one that I'm looking at, so that more everyday working class people can run for office.
Yes.
Because we're trying to protect democracy. We can't say we're trying to protect it, but then try to gatekeep who's
Yes.
allowed to run and who's not.
I had heard something kind of strange from one of my elder friends. He told me back in his day, they used to have to pay to vote,
Yeah.
or have to pay a fee to vote. Is that true? You've heard of that before?
Before, yes. In the past, yeah.
Wow.
And I haven't looked into it, but I heard that it was, yeah.
Can you imagine that process being in place now, in our generation right now? How much money can be generated from that alone?
Oh my goodness, yeah.
And where would that go?
Not to us, yeah. It won't
Thank
go.
you.
It won't,
Thank
won't
you.
come to us.
Thank you. Don't get me started. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, man. What can I do, Michael Davis, do to help with you and also the voting process around here?
Well, this is a start here, and thank you for allowing me this platform. But being educating, getting this information out, and just as one thing I go to when people feel that their vote doesn't count, I say or doesn't matter. I understand, first of all, but I go to anybody who's been in any kind of arena where there anywhere in any place where there's crowds. And I say, individually, yes, if one person cheers way over here and you're on the other side,
Yeah.
you might not hear it, of course. But when everybody cheers, we understand what that sounds like. We know what that sound is. That's a result of every individual person deciding to cheer. Every one person deciding to cheer creates that sound, and it's one unified, beautiful sound. So that's what we have to understand what voting means. Yes, if you're the only one who does it, yes, it won't. But remember, others are going to be doing it with you. And if everybody decides, hey, this is important enough for all of us to do, well, now all of us are making that change. All of us are doing it. It's as simple as, when you try to move something that's heavy. Well, of course, I can't do it, but if all three of us in here, all of us can move it easily.
You just reminded me, and I'm a believer in harmonious things. Even in the universe, everything acts in a harmony and a balance,
Right?
In order to achieve a positive outcome. That's what I believe in. And and I got to take this opportunity to share with you. I wrote an excerpt actually from my book when it comes to equality in men and harmonious things. I wrote that men, particularly black men, must support one another because our survival depends upon it.
Yes.
God intended for black men to be in this universe, and the sooner we realize that fact, the better. And it doesn't matter what your sexual preference is or what you look like. And don't let nobody fool you into thinking that it matters, because it does not. God intended for all men to be in his universe to serve his purpose. And when I look at that, we all have to be harmonious in everything if we're going to expect a positive outcome.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm one of those guys, I love positive outcomes. I do. And when you put positivity into what we're trying to accomplish and achieve, it can't help but come out positive.
Right. Exactly.
That's the end result of everything, I believe. I really do think that, and I want to thank you for coming. I really do. And I'm going to take your word and use this platform to remind everybody to vote, vote, vote. And take an educated vote, too. Take your time to read up and find out all you can about the people who you're going to vote for, the candidates, because they might surprise you. One might surprise you. So go ahead and take that chance, sit down, because we don't have much time left. November's right around the corner, and I expect everybody to be ready. And if you're 18 and over, there should be no reason why you shouldn't vote. That's what I got to say about that. Hate me if you want to, but that's the message for today. Vote, vote, vote. And sir, I meant to say this also, and before I close, I thought about so many men here in Florida that have been imprisoned, and upon release, I learned that they can have their voting rights restored. But the process, and I looked it up, they have to go and fill out a form, submit it back to the state authorities to have their voting rights reinstated. And I look at that and I just wonder, what's the percentage, if any, how many have done that?
And I don't know off the top of my head.
No, I'm not asking you for that, but it's just, it makes me wonder.
Yeah.
Because those are people that are running around that could vote.
Yeah.
And think that they can't.
Yeah, that's true. And that's why, and you mentioned it earlier too, mentioned that you spoke well on this. Education is important. And I feel like that's part of the leadership aspect that I mentioned before, because I feel like that's part of, as part of my responsibility is if I have the information, let me share it. And because a lot of, I have the capacity, because I'm running for office, I have the capacity to, spend all this time on this, but others don't necessarily have that. So even though what I'm sharing with you, you have this to focus on, you have your life to focus on. So you might not have that time to do that. So as I'm doing this, I feel like, and many will feel like that's not our responsibility to teach or to educate, but I feel like it is. Because if we're trying to meet people where they are, which as representatives we should be, that's our entire job. We should be showing up where the people are showing up. So that also includes being able to say, hey, if you don't understand something, it's my job to learn it, and share it if I have that. Or if nothing else, come back and say, okay, well, this is something that people are asking. I don't have the information, but let me get back to you with it.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
All right, everybody.
And thank you for...
You're quite welcome. And we're going to do this again, maybe.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we are. We're getting find time in your busy schedule. All right, everybody. We're coming to a close of this episode. And before I go, I just want to encourage each and every one of you to take the time today to thank God for everything he's done for you. Thank him for waking you up in the morning, and thanking you for just being able to be alive, because he's done so much for us all. God bless everybody, and take care of yourselves.